welcome to the 40-day challenge. This is your morning routine. It's about 12 to 15 minutes every morning after you've had your water, if you've had your coffee. Do this just to kind of get your body ready for the day. If you're going to work out right after this, it's perfect warm-up. If you're just going to go start your day and then work out later, that's perfectly fine. Still a good exercise, stretch, warm-up to get you ready. Now, as we start in a standing position, all right, we're just going to do a few half moons. That is, bring the hands together up overhead, interlace the fingers, release that pointer finger, and then we're going to lean over to one side, right? We're leaning over to the right. Our shoulders are relaxed away from the ears, pressing the hips forward, pushing the left hip away, down through the outside edge of that left foot, relaxing the shoulders from the ears. Deep breaths in through the nose. Long, slow breaths out the nose. Shoulders relaxed again, away from the ears. Palms are married together. Gaze can be straight ahead or maybe up towards underneath the armpit, wherever you feel most comfortable. Come back towards center and then to the other side. Push the hips to the right. Shoulders relaxed away from the ears. Palms married together. Hips reaching to the right. You're pressing down through the outside edge of that right foot. And just leaning every direction. Coming back up. Release the hands, cactus the arms into a slight back bend here. Pressing the hips forward, pushing the chest forward. Exhale, let all that go. Coming into a resting squat. This can be tricky for a lot of folks. You're going to build your way up throughout this challenge, trying to get up to at least 5 minutes into this position. But first, we'll just get into it, see how we feel. So, coming down, sinking the hips down below the knees, hands pressing into the thighs. This is it. You're just resting right here. I'll show you from the side. All right, nice, long, straight back. And you're going to sit here as long as you can manage it. So breathe into any sort of discomfort you might be having and build your way up throughout this challenge. Start with trying to do it for a minute. And if you can stay there, keep going until it starts to become a little bit too much, then you can stop. So you're going to hang out here as long as you can. Again, growing through the crown of the head. All right, pressing those knees out over the feet. Lots of different options though. So if this is starting to feel uncomfortable, you can come down onto your bottom, sink the hips back, laying back flat on the mat, as if you were going into like a happy baby. Just bring your elbows to the insides of the knees and press down. So it's the same pose for hip opening. All right, so you're just laying on your back, you're taking that pressure off the knees, and you're still getting that hip opening. All right, so if you're working towards that 5 minutes, you can stay here. Or you can drop back, pressing the hands together. All right, you're here, just chilling in this pose. This is a great pose to scroll through Instagram or read the rest of the challenge or whatever you have to do for the rest of the day. Check up on emails, kind of lose your mind in the pose, so you're not just thinking like, oh, this is miserable. All right, try to find something a little bit different to trick your brain into breathing into this pose. All right. So you're going to hang here, like I said, for as long as you can, working your way up to 5 minutes. Once that's through, once you get through that 5 minutes, or you've gone through as much as you can do and you've laid on the back and tried the additional poses and you're feeling it, you're like, all right, that's the most I can do for this. The next transition is into a hamstring stretch. And this is one of my favorite hamstring stretches. Best thing to do is find a yoga mat if you can. If you don't have one, just outside edges of the shoulders is a good kind of indicator. But I want the outside edges of your feet parallel, right? So if you have a mat, you can see if your feet are parallel because there's a line right there. Sink the hips back, lower your chest to connect to your thighs. All right, so keep this connection right here. Bend the knees as much as you need to with the weight going back, and then start to walk the hands forward, pressing into the heels and into the arches of each foot as you try to straighten the legs out. You'll feel that start to tremble into the hamstrings. Head is hanging heavy between the arms. And you just imagine there's a little tug of war happening between your wrists and your hips. You're inching the fingers out and pressing the hips up. Start to feel a little tremble in the thighs. That's perfect. That's the change we're trying to make. Again, the point isn't straight legs. It's keeping that chest to thigh connection. That protects your lower back, and it starts to really feed into the meat of the hamstring. I do this You know, you can, if you're feeling, you know, a little static in that pose and you want to mix it up, you can stay here and then you can come up into a half lift. You know, push your hands in your shins, get a nice flat back, and then lower it back down. So it doesn't have to be a static pose. You can make it dynamic by transitioning between these half lifts. But the weight is back in that one. You're not leaning out over the toes. In fact, you should be able to maybe lift the toes up and kind of wave good morning to yourself, since we're doing this in the morning, right? So 2 or 3 more breaths here. Once you've had enough in the hamstrings, we're just going to come into a child's pose. So toes, knees come down, toes come together, sink the hips back, and then just relax into this child's pose. You can keep the hands up onto the fingertips, on the hands, or let the forearms rest. Forehead is on the mat, maybe rock it back and forth. Lots of different options in child's pose. You can stay right there. If your shoulders aren't feeling it that day, bring the hands behind you, rest them on tops of the feet for a fallen leaf, and just sink into the earth. Another thing you can do is work from side to side. So bring your left hand to your right hand, sink that left hip back towards square, get a nice stretch in the side bodies, and both sides if you do that variation. Otherwise, you can just hang out here in your child's pose. If your resting squat wasn't very long and you need to fill up a little bit of space, good thing to do from child's pose is going to cat. Just arching the spine and then sinking back. Arching the spine into cat. Inhale back into child's pose. All right, our next big pose. We have 3 poses in this 15-minute warm-up that we're building our strength up throughout the course of the challenge. The next one is plank. All right. Plank, you have so many options in plank. You can stay here on your knees, all right, if that's where you're feeling it. If you want to come up to the toes, I like a nice flat back. So your back is flat and then you hinge down at the hips after. All right. Hands are beneath the shoulders, core is engaged the whole time, and you're just pressing into the heels. You don't have to stay static in this pose either. You can kind of come up onto the toes, you know, wiggle around. It's the morning. We're trying to loosen everything up. But if you're in this pose, if you're holding yourself up, you're turning on your core, and that's what we're aiming to do here. Build this up throughout the challenge to up to about 3 minutes. If you can go further, go ahead. If you want to come down onto your elbows, that's perfectly fine as well. Okay, so find your plank, build it up. I always start a timer. I started at 15 minutes. I do all my poses, I get through them, and it's about, I do 5 minutes in that resting squat, 3 minutes in a plank, 3 minutes in our next one, and then everything in between is just kind of wiggle room, you know. All right, so we're holding our plank. We get through our 3 minutes, and we're gonna transition here into bridge. So just sit back, bring the legs out in front of you, lay flat on your back, all right? Bend the knees and bring the heels towards the glutes. No closer than if you were to reach down, you'd be able to tickle your heels with your fingers. Now, in bridge, lots of different options here. You can just press the hips up. Internal rotation of the thighs, so you're bringing the legs together. You'll feel that turn on the hamstrings and the glutes as you press the hips up towards the sky. You're not tucking your chin down towards your chest. Instead, you're inflating your chest towards your chin. Just keep working on pressing the hips up and then internally rotating the thighs, bringing the knees closer together. So we're not flaring the knees out here. We're bringing them closer together and continue to press the hips up towards the sky. Shoulders away from the ears, so walk those hands down. If you're feeling a little compression on the spine, it's too much, walk your feet out a little further. That's perfectly fine. If you're feeling good, you can bring them closer, but again, no closer than you'd be able to tickle the backs of your heels. Stay here. I try to stay up for 3 minutes. If you want to go further, that's perfectly fine. Build your way up into this. This is working all the posterior muscles that we neglect in our society when we're sitting, looking down, etc. So this is a great tool to strengthen that lower back, glutes, hamstrings, that whole posterior muscle chain. Keep working at it. Once you've finished your 3 minutes in this, you can lower those hips slowly down to the floor. All right. And you shake those hamstrings out, slap them out on your mat. And then come up into a standing position. We have one more pose, and then it's static at first, and then it moves into a dynamic pose. It's called a founder. We're gonna have the outside edges of the feet parallel. We're gonna bend the knees, but not forward. So the knees bend so that the hips can hinge backwards. All right, so we're hinging the hips backwards, knees are bent, shoulder width apart. Bring the hands out in front of you, squeeze the fingers together into a sphere of tension. So I'm squeezing my fingertips, pulling the wrists apart, squeezing the elbows, and turning on the shoulders. Everything is engaged in that upper body. And then we just sink. Imagine that tug of war is happening again between your wrists and your hips. As you sink the hips back, you'll start to feel that in the hamstring, turning on the lower back, and we're decompressing the spine here. We're teaching the muscles to carry load while they're extended. It's an eccentric, right? Muscle is reaching out, it's stretching out long, but it's carrying the weight. It's teaching all the lower back, glutes, hamstrings to carry the weight of the body. You can keep the hands here. You can bring them up above the line of the forehead. All right, you can bring them out wide, wherever you feel most comfortable. But again, we're trying to feel this into the hamstrings. Knees stay bent, but they don't come forward, right? They're bent, reaching, and then tug of war between the wrists and the hips. Do that maybe 30 seconds. Build into that, right? So we're in this, and then our last is just 10 good mornings. I want you to bring your thumbs right next to your chest, and we're just gonna hinge. The whole upper body moves as one. The knees are staying bent, but they're not moving forward. All the action is happening right here in the glutes and in the hamstrings. Hinging. 10 of those, nice and slow. You should feel that really deep into the hamstrings. Nice and easy. Do 10 of those, and then maybe come back into a founder. Stand all the way up, shake everything out. Your body should be nice and warm after that. You can go start your day, or you can move on to your HIIT workout for the day. Whatever you're doing to get your movement, get your body going throughout this whole challenge. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. I'm happy to help or talk you through any of the other poses that you might need a little bit more clarification on. Good luck. Keep it up.